Welcome to the deep dive. So today we are going deep. I mean, really deep into something truly compelling.
We really are.
We're looking at how traditional knowledge systems in remote indigenous Australia are. Well, they're not just fighting to be preserved.
No, not at all. They're fighting for vitality, for a dynamic, active life. We're going to be looking at the Warlpiri, Tiwi, and Yolju people.
And exploring how their ancient wisdom is being, weaponized in the best possible way against all the pressures of modern life.
Exactly right. Our mission for this deep dive is, well, it's pretty ambitious. We've pulled together sources from all over.
Right.
We have these rigorous university research projects, a lot of community-led archival work from places like Paw Media, and then these really cutting-edge artistic partnerships.
Things involving jazz and hip-hop, which is just fascinating.
It is. And we're trying to find the common thread, How are these groups making sure their heritage is a living history, not just something dusty on a shelf?
And you really have to start with the sense of urgency. It just comes through so clearly in the sources. It's palpable.
Yeah. Among the Warlpiri, for instance, there's this documented concern about the decline. A decline in the vitality of ceremonial song performance over the last, 90 years.
Right, and this isn't some vague feeling of loss. It's a very specific awareness that the intergenerational transmission of knowledge is faltering.
That is breaking down.
That it's breaking down. And that specific worry, it prompted a really targeted response.
Which is where these big projects come in.
Exactly. Like the Australian Research Council Linkage Project, Vitality and Change in Warlpiri Songs. It ran for 5 years. They didn't just want to document a decline.
No, they wanted to do something about it.
They wanted to develop actual strategies to enhance that cultural transmission between the elders and the youth.
So to even begin to understand how they'd organize that kind of revitalization, we have to grasp the basic structure, the cultural labor.
Yes. And it's built on two absolutely essential kinship roles. First, you have the Kurda,
The owners.
the owners of the ceremonies and the songs. And then you have the Kurdungurlu, who are the custodians or managers.
It's a great way to put it. Think of it like this. If the Kurda is the intellectual property holder,
Okay.
then the Kurdungurlu is the project manager. They're the ones making sure the performance is correct, that it's organized, that it's properly handed down.
So it's a balance of power, authority, and execution.
A perfect reciprocal relationship. And a really powerful example is the late George Jungarai writer. He was a senior Kurda for these very specific dreaming sites in Gununguru and Yunupaka.
And he was central to these projects.
Absolutely central. He led the Willowra and Gajakala Revitalization Project.
And what's so profound is where his authority came from. It wasn't formal training in a Western sense.
Not at all. He was born, and this is a quote, in the bush before welfare time. His knowledge came directly from his parents, from the old people. He always stressed that he had to follow his grandfathers.
And that direct line of knowledge, it leads us straight to the role of the archives.
The archives are now essential infrastructure. They act as this crucial bridge. Paw Media and Communications, for instance, has an archive with 50 years of material.
50 years of videos, photos, recordings.
It's a cultural lifeline for a generation that might have missed some of that direct teaching.
And the emotional weight of that archive must be immense.
Oh, it is. There's this direct quote from Elder Harry Jackamara Nelson. He didn't just suggest it. He urged young Warlpiri people to go to Paw Media.
To do what exactly?
To watch the old videos and listen to the old recordings from the early days. He said they needed to hear their grandfathers and their uncles singing.
Because that act itself is part of the law.
It's fundamental to Warlpiri law. It creates this tangible link to the ancestral law, the Jikirpa, through the actual voices of those who have passed.
So for people now who, they might admit they don't know the full breadth of the Jikirpa,
those recordings become a source of strength, of continuity. They're the reference library for an oral tradition.
it's an incredible use of modern technology to reinforce ancient law. Okay, so let's shift focus a bit. Let's go north to the Tiwi Islands.
Right.
Because their cultural dynamic introduces a really sharp new challenge.
A linguistic crisis.
Yeah.
And the Tiwi song tradition, which is centered around ceremonies like Kalama, it's fundamentally different.
How so?
Because it emphasizes innovation. The traditional songs, especially those composed for the Ayipa stage of Kalama, they were like a living public record.
Their honor roll, their almanac.
Their encyclopedia of social history, all of it.
And the expectation was creativity, wasn't it? At Kalama, you were supposed to compose something new?
Yes. Singing an old song would literally be met with laughter.
As if you hadn't done your homework.
Exactly. But maintaining that tradition of innovation is now hitting a roadblock, and it's directly related to a language shift.
You see this linguistic continuum, right?
You do. From Old Tiwi, which is incredibly complex and used in the old songs, all the way to New Tiwi today, which has, simplified grammar and a lot of loan words.
And this is where the technical loss becomes so culturally destructive. Why does that simplification make traditional composition impossible?
It's because the traditional metrical rules are just so specific. They're incredibly demanding. Tiwi songs often need these complex multi-syllable units.
5-syllable units, I think the sources said.
Specifically 5-syllable units, yeah. And those were created by slightly altering or elongating the spoken forms of words.
So you need a flexible language to do that.
You do. And older Tiwi people argue that the modern simplified grammar of New Tiwi, it's lost that phonetic and grammatical flexibility. You just can't construct those metrical units anymore.
So it's not just like losing words from a dictionary. It's like losing the architectural tools you need to build a skyscraper.
That is a perfect analogy. You might have the raw materials, but you've lost the engineering.
And that means the whole tradition of creating new songs stalls.
Precisely. That linguistic loss directly compromises the ability to create the next generation of songs. And that means the social history, the ancestral stories, they're all at risk of being frozen in time.
Which raises this huge philosophical question, right? If the language you need to create is eroding, how does the tradition survive?
And this is where the Yolu people in Arnhem Land offer, I think, the most profound answer. They completely reframe what tradition even is.
They do. For the Yolu, tradition isn't a static thing to be preserved. It's an event in the present.
An event in the present. So the performance of Manake, their ceremonial song, is an active continuation of ancestral law happening right here, right now.
That is incredibly powerful. The past isn't just something to remember, it's being applied. And they have a metaphor for this, Gulari.
Yes, Gulari. The flow of fresh water. It represents ancestral precedent.
So when Manake is performed,
Gulari is seen as forming the very constitution of the present. The performance collapses time. The past isn't a memory, it's a living authority that flows into this moment.
So, if tradition is this continuous flow, like Gulari, that changes the stakes completely. It suggests that as long as the song is being performed, the past is perpetually being remade.
It does. It places all the burden and all the power on the living generation to keep that flow going.
And if the flow stops,
the constitution of the present breaks down.
Right. And
that urgency, you can see it in the complexity of the Manake structure itself.
Right, let's look at that. The sources say that each of the 60-plus clans in Arnhem Land has its own repertoire and its own unique dembu.
Which literally means head. It's their unique melodic pattern.
So that's like 60-plus unique musical languages.
It's a massive undertaking to maintain that level of distinct identity. But there's an integration system. The Bilma modes.
The clapstick patterns.
The clapstick patterns and rhythms. They're often shared between clans that are closely associated. So you might have your own melodic signature, your dembu, but you share the same rhythm.
Or Bilma Sen, as one songman put it.
Bilmas. Ain. Exactly. That shared rhythm provides an anchor, even when the melody is totally unique.
So how does a performance actually begin?
It starts with the lead singer, who initiates the Yuruwaja. They call it the nose speech.
The nose speech?
Yes, the short, hummed introduction. It's used to set the exact pitch and establish the correct Bilma mode for the clapsticks and the yadaki, the didgeridoo.
And it's described as that sound you make when you're just walking along, thinking about a song, right? That little hum.
That spontaneous, reflective humming. It shows that even inside this highly structured ancestral law, there's room for the individual, for spontaneous reflection.
And the content itself is just staggering. Tell us about what's encoded in just one song subject, like the Burkperk song.
Right. So the Burkperk, or plover song, it relates directly to the Wata, the wind ceremony. It's not just a song about a bird.
Of course not.
It's a narrative. It details how the wind carries the bir and bur, the soul of someone who has passed back to the profound waters of a sacred place called Lutumba.
And Lutumba is where fresh water meets salt water.
A sacred meeting point, symbolizing the merging of identities, of boundaries. The song is literally mapping the spiritual geography of the universe.
And that narrative isn't just recited.
No, it's meant to be felt. In the body of the performer and the listener, the skill of the singer, their improvisation, their nuance, that's what draws everyone into that deep, ongoing conversation of tradition.
Okay. We've established the need for archives, the philosophy of dynamic flow. Now let's get to the most radical strategies.
This is where it gets really interesting.
Intentionally transforming tradition to meet contemporary goals, using adaptation as a survival mechanism.
And you see this so clearly with the World Piri example of Milpiri at Lajamanu. It's been held every 2 years since 2005.
And it's described in the sources as a radical transformation of ceremony into theater.
That is a huge statement. And it looks like this. They combine elements from the traditional men's perlapa and women's yawulu ceremonies,
But they blend them with hip-hop.
with highly choreographed hip-hop performances, mostly by the kids from the local school. The staging, the lighting, ancestral designs mixed with modern street dance. It's a true hybrid.
And the whole reason for doing it changed, didn't it? It moved away from being purely ceremonial.
To being a theatrical event with very specific contemporary goals. Revitalization, community engagement, giving the youth a framework for their identity.
And this wasn't an accident. They intentionally embraced things like reggae, rock, and hip-hop and wove them into the narrative of the ancestral law.
It's a way of saying our core law is flexible enough. It can contain modern expression.
But I have to ask, doesn't mixing something so sacred with something like hip-hop risk trivializing it? How do they address that?
They address it through authority. Because it's the elders, the Kurda and the Kurdungurlu, who are guiding this transformation, the new form is seen as legitimate,
So they're using the ancestral blueprint.
but closing it in a way that directly engages the youth. The intention and the cultural ownership are what make the change valid.
And that acceptance of change, that leads us to these amazing cross-cultural artistic collaborations.
Absolutely. Take the Yolu collaboration, Crossing a Roper Bar, or CRB. It brought Wegalak songmen together with the Australian Art Orchestra.
And the sources really stress the humility involved, the listening.
Immense humility. The Western musicians had to fundamentally rethink a key instrument, the yadaki, the didgeridoo.
They thought it was a drone, right, a harmonic anchor.
They did, but after really listening to the Wegalak songmen, they had this realization: its main function in Manake is rhythmic. It's, as one musician put it, like the drums.
Wow, that shift from harmonic to rhythmic must have completely rewired their whole approach.
It did. And the result is this artistic dialogue that uses the deep ancestral blueprint, the uraka, or the bones of the song, to create a totally new but legitimate layer of expression.
So the law is reinforced through adapting the form.
Exactly. And you see a similar community-led dialogue with the Tiwi Islands project in Garo Kuruwala.
That's the one with the Tiwi Strong Women's Group and jazz musicians.
Yes, and in that case, the goal was explicitly stated.
Yeah.
Use new music based on old songs to invigorate cultural pride, especially given that language loss we talked about.
And their solution was just very pragmatic, wasn't it? Both linguistically and musically.
It really was. The strong women started composing what they called modern Kuruwala songs.
Like the crocodile song.
Yes, a crocodile song. It intentionally mixes some of the complex old Tiwi words with modern Tiwi. It acts as a bridge,
Making the ancestral stories more accessible.
more approachable for young people who might otherwise be completely alienated by that dense ancient language. It's a strategic move to make sure the stories keep getting told.
Okay, let's try and connect all these threads. What is the fundamental takeaway here? From the archives, the language crisis, the Yolu philosophy, these collaborations?
I think the core insight is that sustaining culture isn't a static act of preservation. It's an act of dynamic, active, and often pretty radical creation.
Right, it's not about putting it in a museum.
It's the opposite. Whether it's World Piri using old videos for reference, or the Yolu collapsing time with Gulari, or blending ceremony with hip-hop and Milpiri, the strategy is always engagement and adaptation.
And what's so fascinating is that the knowledge systems themselves prove to be inherently flexible. They can absorb new technologies, video archives, jazz improvisation, and use them to reinforce the deepest cultural law.
And that creative engagement is everything, this constant, this historical self-awareness, this restating of the ancestral text through new media and new sounds. That's what keeps the culture tangible, relationship-based, and, most importantly, truly alive.
So here is a final provocative thought for you to carry forward. If the survival of these traditions hinges on radical internal adaptation and, crucially, on these cross-cultural exchanges with non-Indigenous artists and scholars,
Which it clearly does.
what is the responsibility of the global audience in ensuring their continuity? If we engage with this material, if we listen and view and support these new creations, are we ourselves becoming part of that flow? Are we helping the continuation of Gulari?
That is a powerful question. Because if cultural identity can be constructed through musical dialogue, then maybe global recognition of that dialogue becomes a vital nutrient for the stream itself.
Thank you for joining us on the Deep Dive.